The Story of the LUFA, from Palestinian folklore, written by Ibtisam Abu Mayala. It is said that long ago, in a quiet village, there lived a poor man who only wished for his wife to safely give birth to their child so he could raise and educate him, hoping the child would help him in his old age. Little did this man know that in the barren desert beyond his village, an old ogre whose powers were fading and health declining was seeking to kidnap a newborn from the village to raise as his own to help him in his old age. The ogre gathered his strength, disguised himself as a veiled merchant, and headed to the village to gather news, hoping to find a child to snatch. As he wandered through the market, he saw the poor man hurrying towards a modest grocery store, asking the owner for some sweets as his dear wife was giving birth to their first child. The ogre, delighted by what he heard, began following the man through the village alleys in secret. When the man entered his house, the ogre pushed the door open behind him, rushed into the room where he heard the baby crying, snatched the newborn from the midwife's hands, and fled. The man tried to stop the ogre, but the ogre revealed his true face and roared at him, terrifying the man as the ogre carried out his plan. The ogre returned to his home in the barren desert with the baby, intending to teach it the ways of hunting, trickery, and stealing from people. However, he was surprised to find that the baby was a beautiful little girl who, when grown, would be too gentle to hunt or kill. The ogre didn't know what to do but was too tired and exhausted to return the girl or kidnap another child. He decided to raise her as his daughter without revealing his true identity and resolved to hunt once a year to feed on meat and regain his strength so he wouldn't leave the girl alone. Years passed, and the girl grew into a beautiful young woman. She took great care of her ogre father, so he never considered harming or abandoning her. In fact, he would bring her the finest dresses, the most precious jewelry, and the best fabrics. He would also bring her fruits and vegetables, which she would use to cook him delicious meals. The girl, however, had one complaint: her father's annual trips that kept him away for a month each time, without her knowing where he went. One day, the ogre said to his daughter, "Listen, Sarah, it's time for me to travel again. I'm leaving you the keys to all the rooms in this house, but I must remind you never approach the room with the red door. You've grown up now and helped me with many things, but never, under any circumstances, think of going near that door." "As you wish, father, but please take care of yourself. I worry about you every time," Sarah replied. The ogre laughed. "Yes, but don't I always return better and stronger than before?" "Yes, father, but you still refuse to tell me the secret of your travels." The ogre, now irritated, said, "Don't ever bring this up again. Here are the keys. Tomorrow when you wake up, I will have left. Take care, and remember, stay away from the room with the red door." "Yes, father," Sarah replied obediently. The next morning, Sarah woke up and rushed to her father's room to check on him, but he had already left, just as he had told her. She began tidying up his belongings and reorganizing some of the unused rooms, wondering why there were so many. When she approached the room with the red door, she paused for a moment, contemplating whether to open it, but quickly moved away. For several days, Sarah kept returning to the red door, sometimes smelling a strange odor and other times hearing faint sounds from inside. Then one day, a scream echoed through the house, startling Sarah. She frantically searched the house and, upon reaching the red door, realized something was happening inside. Curiosity overtook her, but her father's warning echoed in her mind. "Stay away from that door. Stay away." Sarah was torn, unsure of what to do. Then she noticed a light coming from the keyhole of the red door. Slowly and cautiously, she bent down to peer through the keyhole, and what she saw shocked her. She recoiled in fear, trembling, for she had seen her father, his mouth filled with the blood of his victim, tearing into the flesh before him to eat it raw. Sarah realized that her father was not just an ogre but a flesh eater, hunting and devouring animals and people during his annual trips. She thought to herself that one day he might be unable to travel, and then he would undoubtedly devour her. Filled with fear, Sarah fled from the house into the barren desert, not knowing where to go, carrying only the jewelry she was wearing. She ran and ran until nightfall, finding no shelter. She sat in the middle of the desert, raising her hands to the sky, praying for God to save her from the ogre. To her amazement, she saw a small house flying through the sky, descending until it landed nearby. The door opened, and a weak voice called out to her, "Enter, young lady, and do not be afraid." Sarah entered the house and found an old woman sitting on her prayer rug, dressed in a bright white gown, in a spotless white room. Sarah calmed down upon seeing the old woman and said, "Peace be upon you, kind lady." The woman smiled warmly, returned Sarah's greeting, and welcomed her kindly. She then said, "Rise, house, by God's will." The house began to rise slowly until it was suspended between the earth and the sky. Sarah, astonished, asked, "What is your story, kind lady? And what is the story of this house?" The woman replied, "I used to live in this house with my elderly parents, and I cared for them well in their old age. They often prayed for me, saying, 'May God care for you in your old age as you cared for us in ours.' After they passed away, I grew old and began to complain to God about my fear of wild animals, greedy strangers, thieves, and murderers. God heard my prayers and made this house obedient to my command. At night, it rises above the ground, and in the morning, it descends. I spend my days worshiping God and working to provide for myself by cultivating the land around the house. But today, God has sent you to me, and I believe these are my last days on earth. Perhaps you are the one who will cover me and bury me when I pass away. What do you say?" Sarah smiled sadly and sighed as she sat on the nearest chair, wondering what would happen next and how she would live after the woman passed away. But the kind woman sat beside her and asked Sarah to tell her story. Several days passed, with Sarah helping the kind woman with her tasks. Then, one Friday, the woman performed her ablutions, prayed, and called Sarah, saying, "I believe today is my last day on this earth. You have been a good companion to me these past few days, so I want to give you a gift." She reached out with 3 large walnuts. Sarah took the 3 walnuts, puzzled by the gift. The woman explained, "These are not ordinary walnuts. Inside each one is a beautiful gown, each different in color and design from the others. But there is one problem. Once you crack a walnut and the gown comes out, you will never be able to put it back inside. So be careful only to break one when absolutely necessary." The kind woman passed away, and Sarah covered her body with white cloth, recited the Quran for her soul, and left the house, carrying the 3 walnuts. She said to the house, "Rise by God's will and never descend again." And so, the simple house became the woman's resting place, and Sarah could no longer live there. Sarah ran towards a distant forest and climbed a large tree, hiding among its branches from the animals. She noticed a LUFA vine growing on the tree with large, rough-textured pods that people used for bathing. Sarah thought for a while and then decided that making a dress from the LUFA would protect her from the animals and allow her to leave the tree to search for food. She began picking the LUFA, opening the pods to create fabric-like pieces, tying them together and wrapping her body in them until she was completely covered. She now looked like a strange, rough-skinned creature made of LUFA, which allowed her to safely descend from the tree and search for food. One day, while she was eating some seeds, she heard the sound of horses' hooves approaching. She ran to hide behind the tree, overhearing 2 young men arguing. One said, "Why don't we return, my lord? We ventured too deep into the forest." The other replied, "No, I won't return until I catch something. How can I return from a hunting trip empty-handed?" The prince dismounted his horse and prepared his bow and arrows to shoot the first thing he saw. The guard approached the tree to tie the prince's horse, and Sarah tried to hide behind the tree. But unfortunately, she found herself face to face with the prince, who had his bow drawn. She froze in fear as the prince exclaimed, "This is it. I will hunt this strange animal. It is a strange creature. Oh my God, it is the strangest animal my eyes have ever seen." He raised his bow to shoot the strange creature and capture it, but the creature began to cry. The prince hesitated for a moment, then ordered his guard to approach the creature to see if it was wild or peaceful. Then he commanded him to carry it and place it on the horse to take it back to his father's kingdom as an unparalleled catch. And so, Sarah entered the king's fortress, and the people began preparing to see this strange creature. Then the king said to his son, "What will you do with this animal? Should it be skinned and eaten?" "I don't know, my father, but I am thinking of raising it to see what becomes of it." The prince then ordered the head servant, saying, "I want you to take this creature to the royal kitchen and teach it to work there. I feel that it understands and will help you with the work." After a few days, the prince asked his mother, the queen, "Do you think the creature has learned anything?" "No, I know it is stupid and has not learned anything yet." The prince cunningly said, "Sit down, mother. I want to show you something." Then the prince called a servant and said, "I want you to send me a cup of water with the creature." The creature carried the cup of water clumsily, and when it approached the prince, it dropped the cup on the ground and broke it. The servant rushed to clean the floor and bring another cup for the prince, but the prince said sternly, "Leave that and bring me my sword. Then send me another cup of water with the creature, and if it drops it again, I will cut off its head myself." Sarah carried the cup of water, pretending to be the strange creature. This time, she did not drop the cup out of fear of being killed. When the prince drank, he turned to his mother and said, "Didn't I tell you that this creature understands?" Then the prince approached the creature, hugged it, and said, "It is a charming animal. I will take it with me on my short trips here and there, and it will help me with whatever I ask of it." The prince looked into the creature's eyes as if to say, "I know you understand everything, and I am determined to uncover your secret." And so the prince began to take Sarah on all his travels. Whenever he got tired, he would dismount from his horse and lie down under a tree, resting his head on the lap of that gentle animal. When he woke up, he would playfully say to his creature, "If only you could speak." Whenever he was hungry, he called the creature to share his meal, watching it eat with elegance and decorum. His confusion and astonishment would return as he said, "I will uncover the secret of this animal one day." Sarah would smile under her disguise as she noticed the prince growing more and more interested in her and her secret. Until one day, the prince called his beloved creature and said to his mother, "I will fulfill your request on one condition. I want you to make my favorite cakes with the help of the creature." The queen exclaimed, "This is impossible. You will be traveling a long distance, and you will need to eat these cakes along the way. I want them to be neat and well made. And if you stop during your journey and return with a king's daughter as your bride, you might offer her some of these cakes. What will you say if they are not up to standard?" Sarah trembled when she heard what the queen said. So, her prince would travel to bring back a bride for himself. The prince noticed the sadness and shock on his gentle creature and said, "This is my condition, mother, or else I will not travel." The queen did not want to anger the prince, so she agreed to his condition and ordered the servants to prepare everything necessary. She herself, assisted only by the creature, made the prince's cakes. The next day, the prince bid farewell to his family, took his entourage, and traveled to ask for the hand of the daughter of the neighboring kingdom's king. This time, he left the creature at the palace. The entourage traveled all day, and when night fell, some servants set up a tent for the prince to sleep in, while the guards surrounded it to protect him. The prince, satisfied with his food and drink, ordered some of his mother's cakes to taste. The prince ate the first cake and took a second one. As soon as he bit into it, his teeth hit something hard. He quickly looked at the cake and found a beautiful wristwatch inside. He was surprised by this and put it on, thinking to himself, Perhaps my mother wants to remind me not to delay." On the second night, while he was eating some of his mother's cakes, he tasted something strange. When he looked inside his cake, he found a neatly folded handkerchief with his name beautifully embroidered on it. His astonishment grew, but he thought to himself, "Maybe my mother wants me to take care of myself while traveling, to wipe my sweat and seek shade as much as possible along the way." But on the third night, when he started eating his mother's delicious cakes, his teeth hit something strange again. This time, when he looked at the cake, he found a beautiful ring with a large, luxurious diamond in the center. He couldn't contain himself this time and said, "My mother could not have gifted me such a ring in this way." Then, without warning, he ordered his entourage to pack up because he had decided to return home and uncover the truth behind what was happening to him. The prince's convoy arrived at the kingdom, and the people welcomed him with celebrations, songs, and chants. When his father asked about his bride and his quick return, he replied, "I have decided, Father, to marry a girl from this kingdom. Therefore, I ask you to announce this news to the people and to hold 3 nights of celebration in the palace courtyard, where people can dance and celebrate as they wish. On the 3rd night, I will announce who my bride will be." The king announced the news and ordered 3 nights of celebrations. The girls adorned themselves and the young men dressed up, for it was a royal party. Songs and laughter filled the air, and joy and happiness spread throughout the palace courtyard on the 1st night. When the servants left their posts to join the people in the celebration, Sarah found herself alone in the royal kitchen. She gathered her courage, took off the creature's costume, and broke the first magical nut. From the nut came a beautifully designed pink dress and a shiny, beautiful pair of shoes. Sarah put on her new dress, wore the shoes, styled her hair, and went out to join the celebration. She passed by the crowd, and everyone who saw her turned to gaze at her, wondering who this beautiful girl was. When they examined her dress and jewelry, they thought she was one of the princesses, so no one dared ask her to dance or even speak to her. Then the prince noticed her. Her beauty and elegance amazed him, and he approached her to ask her to join him in the dances and group celebrations filling the courtyard. He held her hand and joined the people in dancing, clapping, and celebrating until, when everyone grew tired and began to leave for their homes, Sarah, afraid of being discovered, hurried back to the kitchen to change into the creature's costume and hide her dress under the large table where she slept. The prince searched for the beautiful girl everywhere and asked everyone he met about her, but no one knew who she was, and no one could tell him anything. On the 2nd night, the prince gathered some soldiers and ordered them to surround the entrances to the palace courtyard. If the girl left, one of the soldiers was to follow her to find out where she lived. As for Sarah, she kept an eye on the servants until they left her alone again. She broke the 2nd nut, and from it came a red dress with a large red flower on the waist made of patterned fabric that made Sarah look like the most beautiful of princesses. Sarah danced, laughed, and rejoiced all night long. When people began to leave, she snuck back to the kitchen as she had the previous night. But this time, the prince did not search for her. Instead, he waited for one of the soldiers to come and tell him where her house was. When no one came, he gathered his soldiers and asked them, and they told him that she had not left the palace. She had not passed through any gate. On the 3rd day, everyone was talking about how that night, the prince would announce his bride. Sarah remained confused. Tonight, she would dance and sing and see the prince's bride, all without him knowing of her love for him. Yet, when the party began, she couldn't resist breaking the last nut. From it came a dazzling white dress, as if it were made of pearls, its whiteness captivating. The sleeves were adorned with a silver ribbon that extended from the shoulder to the wrist, and some beautiful white diamonds were scattered on the sides of the dress. When Sarah wore it and appeared before the prince among the people, she looked like a white angel bringing joy and happiness to this kingdom. The prince was delighted to see her, but this time, he quietly slipped away without her noticing and went to the royal kitchen, hoping that this girl was the mysterious creature whose secret had not yet been revealed. The prince began calling for his gentle creature, searching for it here and there. When he couldn't find it, he looked where it slept under the table and found a rough outfit made of coarse fabric placed on the bed. The prince took the burlap dress from the kitchen, burned it along with the bedding, and hid the two items in his room. He then returned to join the celebration, as if nothing had happened. When the guests began to leave the palace, the king asked him, "Will you not announce your bride?" The prince laughed as he saw Sarah sneaking toward the kitchen. "Yes, my lord. Come and let me introduce you to her." The king followed the prince until they reached the palace kitchen, where they found Sarah bewildered, searching for her burlap dress and bedding but finding nothing. The prince said, "Here she is, my father. She is my princess and my bride. Are you looking for the burlap dress, my dear?" Sarah was stunned and didn't know what to say. The prince continued, "Yes, my father. She was disguising herself in the burlap, and I insist on knowing her story." Sarah then told the king and the prince her story, and when she finished, the prince said, "If you permit me, my father, I will not hold the celebrations until I lead my army and find out who that ogre is and who Sarah's people are. I will then kill the ogre and bring her parents to bless our marriage." And that's what happened. The prince killed the ogre and brought the kind poor man and his wife to live in his kingdom, honored and respected. The celebrations and joyous nights began, and Sarah and her prince became the happiest couple.